Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So welcome back to the homestead. Today is the weekly garden tour, and I came out here to film it, but Mother Nature has other ideas. So I have a feeling this particular tour is probably going to get filmed in segments. I'm gonna have to run out into the garden during the breaks in the rain. But in the meantime, I thought I would go ahead and do my introduction and share a little bit about what we have going on here. If you are brand new to the channel, again, my name is Constance. My husband and I were an active duty Army family for 25 years. We have 3 grown children, and we planted roots in northern Alabama. We started our homestead here on just under 10 acres, and it is 2/3 clear land and the rest is woods. And when we bought our property, there was nothing here. There was just the house and a shed barn, and that is it. No fencing, no gardens, no nothing. And so it has been a gradual process, year by year, growing our homestead. Now, my husband, who I refer to as Mr. Smith, he actually works full-time. He commutes into the city. So what goes on here in the homestead is mostly my handiwork, although Mr. Smith helps out when he can, and he gets to enjoy the benefits of living this lifestyle. Now, the gardens that we have here, we have 2 gardens. One is directly in front of me off of the front porch, and that is a raised bed garden. And then over to the side of the property, we have an in-ground no-till garden. And I have been implementing kind of permaculture practices and building the soil, because our property, our home, was built on old farmland. And so we started off with soil that was essentially lifeless. You couldn't even find earthworms in it. And now it is gradually becoming healthier. Every year the plants are doing a little bit better. It doesn't mean we don't struggle, because we do. I mean, everybody does. Whether it's blight or illnesses or pests, you name it, everybody's going to deal with it. That's what makes gardening an adventure, because it's always a challenge. You've always got something to overcome, and that just adds to the satisfaction and the enjoyment of what comes out of it. So this particular tour, as soon as we get going, as soon as there is a break in the rain, is part of the Homesteaders of America collaboration. Every week there are several channels who are participating and taking you on tours of their garden, sharing the things that they're doing, what they're growing, how they're growing it, what challenges they're facing. And it is a great way to be inspired by other homesteaders and gardeners, and to learn from one another. Now, I personally do a garden tour every single week here on the channel. It goes live every Monday. Normally my videos go live around noon central, but for the HOA collaboration, they'll be going up earlier in the morning. And once a month, my tours are part of that collaboration. So once we get done here, be sure to head on over to the Homesteaders of America channel, where you can find all of the channels that are participating in this collaboration and watch more garden tours. So right now, I'm just going to drink my coffee, and as soon as there's a break, we'll head out into the garden. Alright, so the rain has stopped. We've actually got a little bit of blue in the sky peeking out over there. And so, time to do the garden tour. So today I'm going to start over here on this end. This is my front garden area. It's mostly a raised bed garden, and it's directly in front of the house and completely enclosed by 4-foot fencing topped with an electric hot wire. Over here, I've got a cinder block bed. This is our asparagus, which we are working to get established. I just put this in the beginning of last year, and so it'll be a couple of years before we can actually do any of the harvesting from that. This is one of my pear trees. This front area, not only is it a raised bed, but I've also got lots of baby trees, both inside the fence and outside the fence. Apple trees, pear trees, peach trees. Over on the far side, I just planted a little baby nectarine. I had 2 of them. The deer have not been friendly. So now there's only 1. I don't know if it'll make it, but I'm gonna give it a chance. Down here I have 2 little baby goji berry bushes that got planted this year. These actually came from Stark Brothers, and so far they're looking really good. This bed right here is one of my 5-minute raised beds. It just went in a few weeks ago, and I planted it with all of my extra pepper plants. I'm growing 10 different kinds of peppers this year. We've got bell peppers, pepperoncinis, we've got Chinese 5-color, and I've got little peppers on a lot of my plants so far. Here's a pepperoncini. Over here you can see a few of the Chinese 5-color peppers, that lovely purple. Now moving over here to my larger raised beds, I've got all sorts of things planted in these. Now this one in particular is mostly tomatoes, which are on the far side of the trellis. Right here I have a lemon queen sunflower. I've got sunflowers scattered all throughout the garden because frankly, I love sunflowers. Now here on the arched trellis, you can see I've got Kajari melon. This is my first year growing it, and we just had that storm come through here, so some of my vines have fallen down. Need to kind of help them out here. There you go. So I've got all sorts of blossoms for Kajari melons, and so I'm very hopeful. Oh, look right there. That looks like the beginning of a melon. Oh, so I really hope I get Kajari melons, at least one this year, so that I can try them out. Oh, there's another one right down there. Because I've never grown them before. Now I have 2 trellises that come out of this bed. One is the arch that connects over to the bed next to it, and then I have a straight wall one right here, which is a support for tomato plants. And these tomato plants are absolutely going crazy. This one here is a purple Russian tomato. These were actually a free packet of seeds that came from Baker Creek with an order that I did. And so I figured since I had the seeds, I would go ahead and give them a try. And some of these tomatoes are pretty impressive. I mean, look at this one down in there. Gorgeous. Over on this bed, I have, again, more tomatoes. These are the Berkeley pink tie-dye tomatoes. Right down here, this is pineapple sage. This is a flowering sage. It'll get really big and bushy, and at the very end of summer, it will have beautiful red flowers. This is my broadleaf sage patch. It's a perennial here. Here's some of my thyme. I have lots of zinnias all over the place, and this one in particular has a bit of Japanese beetle damage. The Japanese beetles have been atrocious this year, although I have to say they were actually worse last year. So this right here is seashell, I think it was, cosmos. They haven't flowered yet, but I have seen a few heads forming, so I'm hoping to see some lovely cosmos before too long. These tomato plants right in here are Dr. Weis tomatoes, which are a very large yellow just very mild tasting tomato. They have great flavor, and that comes from someone who actually doesn't like tomatoes, believe it or not. I don't like raw tomatoes, let me just clarify. This one over here is my lone Paul Robeson tomato plant. So I mentioned that it was my lone Paul Robeson, and that's because I ended up pulling one of my tomato plants out this week. They had developed an issue, a type of virus that there's really no way of treating it. You pretty much just have to pull the plant out of your garden, get it away from your other plants as quickly as possible. And it's transmitted through thrips, those little itty-bitty speck sort of pests that are even smaller than aphids. And I knew that pests were going to be an issue this year because of the there is something by the garden. What the heck? One moment. So I can't really tell from over here, but I think I'm looking at a So it's always an adventure here on the homestead. Now I know why my chickens were kind of freaking out and why one of the cats was sitting up on the truck watching over that way. Yes, by the way, the first year that we lived here, we had a little bit of an incident with a skunk and one of our dogs. And if you ever have a situation where one of your dogs or a cat gets sprayed by a skunk, I found a foolproof way of de-skunking your dog. I have an article all about that on cosmopolitancornbread.com, and I will link that down below, so if you need it, you can save that. As a matter of fact, even if you don't need it, save it just in case, because you may someday, or you might know somebody else who does. So, back to the garden. As I was saying, we did not have much of a winter. I mean, in my regard, we didn't even have one. Where we are at, now generally we will have a number of days where it gets well below freezing, at least at night. Our water spigots here that we have are not freeze proof, and so we have to wrap them and insulate them, and it gets to where we cannot use them in the middle of winter, and I have to do the ever so fun chore of filling up 5-gallon buckets in the bathtub, carrying them through the house and out to where we need to water the chickens and everything else. Depending on the winter, I may have to do that a lot. Sometimes I just have to do it a couple weeks or so. We didn't have to do it at all this year. We did not have a single night where it got so cold that our water spigots froze. And so our winter was just about non-existent. And I knew that that meant we were going to have a really difficult time with pests this year. And in that regard, it did not disappoint. We have been dealing with Japanese beetles. We've been dealing with Japanese beetles. I just saw my first stink bugs this week. The squash bugs came on early, but I think I've gotten a grip on them. I haven't actually seen any in several days now. But the biggie we've really been dealing with has been the slugs and the cucumber beetles. And in our garden, I only use pest control, sprays, powders, etc. that are approved for organic gardens. I don't want to use things that will endanger the bees or the other pollinators. And the compromise in that means we're going to have things that we have to work harder at, and it means that we're going to have things that aren't perfect. There's going to be spots on some tomatoes, or there might be scars on the peppers. But you know, here's the thing. This is real food. We're growing real food that hasn't been formulated in a lab or sprayed with toxic things that you don't want to put in your body. The fruits and vegetables, they may have some marks, but that just means they have a story and it means they have character. Real food has character, so that's okay. But if it means the bees are safe and everything else, I'm okay with that. So my green stalk here, which I dubbed the beanstalk, several of the cells have lovely green beans. These are all bush beans peeking out of them. The very top row, the top tier, I put zinnias, and I actually see my first one down in there. This is my first year using this. I just got it a couple of weeks ago and planted it right away as soon as I got it. So I'm looking forward to this experiment of the green stalk. Now this raised bed over here, this is actually the last year I'll be using it. It's one of the very first ones I ever built, but I built it with non-treated wood and it's just basically disintegrating. I'm still using it, but again, it'll be the last year it's used. At the end of the season, I'll be ripping this out as well as the one next to it, and I will be building a new raised bed, probably a long bed in this particular area. Now over here in this bed, that is a bronze lettuce. I forget what variety exactly. I'll put it in the screen here somewhere. And I let several of the plants just go to seed, and I did that for a couple reasons. First of all, I think it's beautiful. It will develop flowers on the top that the pollinators will love, and I'll be able to collect seeds for next year. In the center here, I have some sunflowers that I planted. I honestly don't remember which variety. I've got all different kinds of sunflowers, and I think this might have been a lemon queen, but we'll find out when it flowers. Down here at the bottom of the trellis, I have some cucumbers. These would be the Ashley cucumbers. This is butterfly weed, a beautiful flower for the pollinators. It's a perennial. This is a type of coreopsis, also a perennial. And then this is a new addition. I went to a farm store in Cullman, Alabama, one I had never been to before, and I found this Cuban oregano. It's got really thick leaves. I've never grown one like this before, and I love the variegated color on the leaves. This right here is actually Thai basil, and I need to come out here and pinch off all of these flowers so that it bushes up even more. So here is my first flowering Cosmo. It is a seashell variety, so the petals, they're kind of wet from the storm, but they're kind of a tubular shape of a petal. It's my first time growing those. Kind of cool. So down in here we've got national cucumbers, we've got some Tulsi basil, we've got zinnias, we've got some dahlias. These are snapdragons. There's some columbine down in here. This is summer savory, which is an herb, culinary herb. We've got some chicory. Down in there was some yarrow, but I think it's going to get smothered by all of these plants. And then right down in here is some beautiful nasturtium. This is the Alaska red nasturtium. It's got these gorgeous crimson flowers and variegated leaves. You know, it's funny, this particular bed, you look at how full it is and how everything is just like a jungle. When I planted it, I was thinking it was going to be sparse, and I didn't think I had planted enough things in it. I was wrong. As you can see, I was wrong. It has definitely filled in, and there's probably an abundance of things that I probably could have planted fewer things in it. Alright, so now we are out in the no-till garden, and I just came in the garden gate. And out here in the no-till garden, I have long beds that are all about, I would estimate about 4.5 feet wide, 4 to 5 feet wide, somewhere around there. And the distance between them, I made it just wide enough that I can pull my garden cart down through in between the sections, in between the beds. That way I can add compost, I can carry in mulch or whatever I need to, and I can get the cart down through there without having to run over my garden beds. So I was very intentional in the width of the rows in between my beds. And you'll notice behind me that yes, indeed, I have a couple of chickens who are in the garden here. Over in the corner of this fenced area, I have a chicken coop with a run, and I have just 4 little Japanese bantam chickens who live in that coop. And early in the garden season, when everything is little baby plants and their seeds and all that stuff, they have to stay in their run. They're not happy about that. But once the plants start getting established and everything, I open the door, I let them have free reign of the garden. They come through here and they eat bugs, and they're just helpers in my garden. And because they're so little, I feel like they're not really going to do a lot of damage. And so if they scratch a little plant or if they eat a low-hanging bean, I'm okay with that. So this first bed right here starts with a trellis of purple pod pole beans, and it's my first time ever growing them. They're going crazy, and we've got baby beans all over the place. So I'm really excited to try these. I've heard very good things about this variety of bean, and so I'm looking forward to trying them. Then in the very next bed is another trellis full of green beans, pole beans. These are the NT half runners. Now, to look at this bed from this angle, you would probably think I was just growing flowers out here in the garden. And I have to tell you that every single flower from the trellis coming this way was a volunteer. I did not plant any of these this year. All of these zinnias came back on their own. And there's actually a few more of them than I realized, but that's okay. The zinnias weren't the only volunteers. Every bit of the okra that you see growing down through here were also volunteers. Now I did relocate the majority of the little seedlings as they came up, because I installed a drip line watering system in the garden this year, and so I relocated the seedlings to coincide with where the drip line was. And so I'm definitely not going to complain about all of this volunteer free okra, nor will I complain about all of these beautiful volunteer zinnias. I have some of the Mongolian giant sunflowers. I grew these last year. I love them, and instead of doing a row of them this year, I just randomly put them in different spots all around the garden. I have one over there right at the end of that second bed where I have my little welcome trellis. Now over there you can see on the far side a sunflower that is covered with flower heads. That is a lemon queen sunflower. A lot of people don't realize that there are sunflowers that have multiple flowers on them, and those lemon queens are just one of my favorites. So another addition to the garden that I haven't mentioned previously is that over here in the corner we planted 2 fig trees, and I think they're struggling a little bit because it got so hot so fast. But we are being diligent about coming out here, making sure the soil stays warm or moist and everything, and hopefully fingers crossed they make it. This bed down here is being prepared. In a couple of weeks we're going to plant corn out here for a fall harvest. You can see my little garden helpers in the zucchini bed there. I see my very first harvestable zucchini. So excited. I'm not going to try and break this off because I have a tendency to break my zucchini, so I will grab a cutting tool in a minute and come out here and cut this off and harvest this. So happy! Yay! Alright, so that is it for this week's garden tour. As I said at the beginning, I do one of these garden tours every single week, and I take you through and I show you some of the things that are taking place in the garden, what is new, how things are doing, what we're struggling with, and I just enjoy sharing the experience of having a garden and living this wonderful homestead life. Both the challenges and the accomplishments, the successes and the failures, because failures are just learning opportunities. You learned what didn't work and you'll try something next time. And it looks like I'm wrapping this up just in time because the clouds are rolling in again, and I think we're about to have the next round of rain, which the garden will very much appreciate. So if you're just finding my channel by way of the Homesteaders of America collaboration, thank you for coming along and visiting. I hope you enjoyed going on the tour of the garden. And if you aren't already subscribed, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. I also have a free newsletter that you can sign up for. There is a link down below this video. The newsletter is the best way to stay up to date on everything that is happening, both here on the YouTube channel as well as my website, cosmopolitancornbread.com, where I am a writer and have been a blogger for many, many years. Here on the channel, I do at least 3 videos a week of homesteading, home cooking, and back to basics. And over on the blog, you can find hundreds of recipes and homesteading and home life related articles. So thanks for coming along with me on this week's garden tour. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I will talk to you all next time.